Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Michael Kessler from Global Health Solutions, and today we're going to be talking about merging two complementary programs, Life Vessel and HeartQuest. One is for treatment and one is for measuring your results to show your patient improvement on multiple levels. And we want to thank Todd Strain, the president of Life Vessel, for putting this all together today. And with that said, this is our team from Global Health Solutions. And I'm again Dr. Michael Kessler, and I've been practicing for over 35 years. I'm a DC, doctor of chiropractic, but I went into functional medicine and also bioenergetic medicine. And now I'm involved in teaching and educating practitioners as well as still treating. And I met Dr. Javdat Kermov, I don't know, maybe 13 years ago at a conference, and he showed me some amazing technology from the Soviet Union. And I looked at this technology, this is the forefront of what I thought was being able to objectively see what's going on multiple levels with whatever treatment you're going to perform in your office. And I go, wow, I want that for my office. And then another 5 years down the road, we formed a company and we started to bring this into this country and we started to improve it. And we're constantly improving it. And this is probably our 10th generation at this time. And last but not least is Dr. Sandra Bacchetti, who's also a DC and trained in Chinese medicine and is our corporate coordinator. And we couldn't function without her. With that said, this is some of the screens that you see below from the technology called the HeartQuest. And HeartQuest is a functional evaluation tool. It's not just what we call heart rate variability. It gives us the ability to look at much deeper levels of regulation in the body, which we'll be talking about. And every screen tells a story and gives you you and the patient a really nice visual picture as far as what's going on. So when we look at the HeartQuest, it's really a window into looking at the autonomic nervous system. So when we talk about the autonomic nervous system, it regulates 95% of all your organs and glands without you thinking about it. It's pretty important, right? And you cannot be healthy without a robust dynamic autonomic nervous system. Now, the autonomic nervous system, as most of you know, but this is just a review for some of you, is made up of two branches: the sympathetic fight or flight and the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. And they have to be able to dance back and forth as needed to regulate the body. So when we're in a situation like you see this beast coming after you right here on the right, or maybe it's the IRS coming to audit you, and it says here, you're not really a bad person. So we'll just confiscate everything you own and let you off with a warning. Or maybe your mother-in-law said she was going to stay for a couple of days and now she's staying for a couple of months. Whatever it is that pushes your buttons and stimulates that fight or flight, it's all the same. The body is going to go into survival mode. And when it does that, it prepares the body for exactly that, survival. And so it's going to dilate the pupils. And why is it going to do that? Because it wants to be able to see. You want to be able to see a large peripheral view so you can escape and see where the exit is to escape from the beast, or climb a tree, or whatever you need to do. How about increasing your heart rate and your heartbeat and your blood pressure to get you prepared to run and escape and relax your airway so you can get more oxygen into your lungs to run. And there's other things that need to be inhibited, because when you're being chased by a beast, or when you're under this stress fight or flight situation, you don't need your digestive system to work, because you need the energy for other functions for survival. So digestion shuts down, and that's probably why when you're sitting at dinner and you're having an argument, it's probably where you're stressed out. It's not a good idea to be eating, because the digestive system is going to shut down. You're going to need more blood glucose to your blood in your bloodstream for your muscles to be able to utilize that energy to be able to run and escape. You're going to inhibit the activities of the intestines, and you're going to stimulate secretion of all your stress hormones for survival. Now, as you can see, you probably don't want to be in that state for long periods of time, which a lot of people today are that come into our clinic. We need to be able to go into this state, and if we survive and we get over whatever the stressor is, we go to the parasympathetic nervous system side so our body can rest and digest. In other words, it can regenerate and heal. This parasympathetic side is very important because that's the side where our body is able to repair itself. At night when you go to sleep, and if you go into REM sleep, hopefully, the body is able to repair and regenerate itself, and that's the parasympathetic nervous system side. Okay? And we also know that people that are alpha centenarians, people that live past 100, a lot of them have very good parasympathetic tone. And we can see that on the HeartQuest. And now there's so much research going on about the parasympathetic nervous system that has to do with a reflex called the cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway. So that parasympathetic nervous system has a nerve that is part of the parasympathetic nervous system called the vagus nerve, the longest nerve in the body, and that has to do also with reducing inflammation and these autoimmune cases that we see, like lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. And so it's very, very important to have tone in your parasympathetic nervous system. We'll talk about that in just a moment. And we think that when you're utilizing the life vessel and you start to see that, which we'll show you on the HeartQuest, the vagal tone starting to increase, that's what you want to be doing. And it seems to be the case when you're utilizing your life vessel therapy with your patients. And again, there's this book. It's a great book. It's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And it's written by this researcher from Stanford, Robert M. Sapolsky. He's a PhD. And what he says is the reason zebras don't get ulcers because if they happen to be lucky and escape from the lion, they don't sit around and think about, oh no, maybe he's going to be, he's going to be around the corner from me. Maybe I escape, but he's going to still get me. Maybe I won't be able to run as fast as the other zebras next time. And the mind is working like this, and most of us, and causes us stress and stress about things that aren't even going to happen to us. And the zebras don't have that particular problem. They don't worry about this stuff. And so if we could only turn our patients into zebras, right, they would be much healthier. So we're going to just go briefly over what the stress response is, because when you're utilizing the life vessel, one of the main things that you're trying to accomplish with the life vessel is to reduce the stress. And this is what stress is. So we have cholesterol. And cholesterol is not a bad thing because you need cholesterol to make something called pregnenolone, which is a precursor to making some of these hormones that are involved with your adrenal glands, cortisol and DHEA. And a lot of times you can't make these hormones if your cholesterol is too low, and that can happen with statin drugs sometimes. So cortisol is the primary stress hormone produced by the adrenals, like we said. Cortisol is a potent anti-inflammatory hormone. Cortisol can also, though, suppress the immune function. Cortisol can raise blood glucose. And that's important because I've had patients who've had a perfect diet and they couldn't understand why they were looking on their blood tests and it looked like they were pre-diabetic. And they were heading towards what we call syndrome X or metabolic syndrome. And it's because of stress. Because long-term stress and cortisol can raise blood glucose. Cortisol can suppress the conversion of something called T4, thyroxine, to the active thyroid hormone called T3. T3 is the one that does all the work in your cells for your metabolism. And so long-term stress could suppress that because of cortisol. And the other, it's kind of almost like yin and yang, the two, cortisol and DHA, produced by the adrenals. But DHA is a precursor to testosterone and estrogen. DHEA is a very powerful anti-aging hormone. Low DHEA is usually found with most diseases, really cancer, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes, depression, hypothyroid, and adrenal fatigue. Since cortisol and DHEA have opposing effects, they are viewed together as a ratio. So when you do lab tests with a lot of functional medicine docs, they look at the salivary hormones and they look at the cortisol to DHEA ratio, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. And these two hormones work together as an alternating dualistic function in the body. And let's go on. Here's something else that's kind of interesting. It's called the cortisol still. So the body will always deal with life-threatening situations as a priority. Therefore, instead of making sex steroid hormones like estrogen and testosterone, the body will prefer to make cortisol. Okay, because cortisol is involved in that fight or flight and that stress response in survival. The body's always going to deal with the survival first, right? And that's why a lot of people have, especially I see these men that come in and they have low testosterone. And really what they need to do is we need to deal with the stress load first and improve adrenal function, right? So here's a healthy stress response for you. You have a balanced stress response. This is what it looks like. So whether the stress factors are mental, emotional, chemical, nutritional, structural, physical, or energetic or electromagnetic, it stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, which we're going to be looking at on the HeartQuest. And that's going to stimulate some higher centers in the brain, part of the brain called the hypothalamus pituitary axis, the HPA axis of the brain. And then that is going to stimulate those glands on top of your kidneys, the adrenal glands, and you're going to release adrenal hormones. And those hormones we talked about, that's going to be increased cortisol and increased DHEA. And when those hormones build up in the body, kind of like a thermostat, the hypothalamus is going to kind of pick that up and say, hey, we don't need any more of this. We got to stop stimulating the adrenal glands so we don't overstimulate, right? It's a negative feedback loop and inhibits further stimulation. And now we have a balanced cortisol to DHEA ratio. So here's the maladaptive stress response, okay? What we have here is we have the same response with the stress factors and the stimulation of the sympathetic nervous system and stimulating the hypothalamus, the HPA axis. We stimulate those adrenal hormone release again, and we have increased cortisol. But now we have reduced sensitivity to brain centers for inhibition feedback. It's being stimulated so much of the time now, and so that negative feedback loop is not working. It's kind of resistant, and we have increased cortisol. So now we have an increased cortisol to a DHEA ratio. This is what happens. So what's the effect of this? What is the effect in our patients? Well, they're going to have increased allergies, lowered resistance to infections, that's yeast, virus, bacteria. That's why when people are stressed, they have a tendency to get sick, right? Poor glucose utilization. They're more prone to osteoporosis, hyperlipidemia, obesity, loss of lean muscle mass, and edema. And also remember that the thyroid could be affected, that conversion of T4 to T3. And there's a lot more. We could keep adding to this list, right? And cortisol also is more catabolic. That means it's breaking down the muscle. So here it says increased protein breakdown, so leading to what we call sarcopenia. And so you're breaking down muscle and probably increasing body fat as well, because those are the people that have that fat around around their belly, especially at the waist here. And again, this can also contribute to something called insulin resistance. Okay, chronic stress, burnout, and beyond. Now, the stress is continuous; it hasn't gone away. Now we're in the chronic stress response phase. Same thing is going on, like we said before, but now the cortisol is becoming decreased. very minimal inhibition feedback. So you either get reduced or normal DHEA, but you get to really have decreased cortisol, okay? So what are the effects of this? Again, low cortisol to DHEA ratio, you're going to have possible hypoglycemia, so they may have hunger and depression, low energy, possibly. Immune dysfunction, maybe allergies, inflammation, lowered resistance to infections, and the mental symptoms, irritability, have a poor memory and concentration, anxiety, and lethargy. And here it is, physical symptoms, headaches, heart palpitations, PMS, impaired digestion, alcohol intolerance. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And these are some of the people you're seeing that are coming in to your office. And finally, total burnout. That's what that really is, everything I just went over. So I just wanted to review the stress response and what happens, because it seems to me that the life vessel is helping to reduce that stress load, as we're going to see in just a moment. So Global Health Solutions worldview of integrated systems. So whether you're practicing functional medicine or Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine or whatever it is you're doing, the commonality is that all these systems view the body as an interconnected system. What affects the complex human body is lifestyle, environmental factors, and genetic variations, and the HeartQuest can view how these stressors are affecting that individual. So here's a really good example for you. This is a consultation with a patient after initiating treatment. And we're able to visually show your patient the effects of life vessel on their health. So they came in, you gave them a baseline reading on the HeartQuest, okay, before you performed the life vessel. And then you're going to treat them maybe for the 4 visits or for, maybe 8 visits or however you do that. And after the end of each series, you test them on the HeartQuest to show them the improvement. And in this case, Mrs. Jones, it looks like your biological age is less than your actual age. And patients really, really care about that. They want to be younger than their biological age. And you tell her your stress index is coming down. So they relate to stress. Oh, my stress is coming down, and you tell them and you explain to them about the parasympathetic nervous system, and it's improving, and with that you're able to sleep better. These results are confirmed in your 24-hour energy cycle, because we have something that actually looks to see if you're a day or night person. You can kind of see if you're getting sleep, and you can make adjustments on that. And the thyroid functional index is giving us feedback that your thyroid is working better. From a Chinese medicine perspective, the water element also is looking better, and especially the kidney meridian is more balanced. And what that really means is that the adrenal glands is starting, what we just went over, is starting to work a little bit better. And you go further, and depending on your scope of practice, the ketogenic adaptive diet is working for you with some intermittent fasting, and this seems to work well for the Vata dosha from an Ayurvedic perspective. So in this system that we have, the HeartQuest, we're able to look at not only Western medicine, but Eastern medicine as well. And so here it is, the many faces of HeartQuest. So all these screens that you see here on the left are from traditional scientific research on heart rate variability and the importance of heart rate variability. And all the ones on the right here are from research coming out of the Soviet Union, from many, many mathematicians, physicists, and scientists who developed this superior evaluation system. And again, we've been improving it over the last many years as well. And this was used to track the Russian military. This was used to track the submariners in those tin cans to see how well they can adapt to stress and other branches of the Soviet military, and then it branched out into the hospitals, into sports medicine, and so on and so on. Now, hopefully into your office. And here are some of the other screens looking at Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, and some of the energetics of the body in the energy plexus of the body, or you can call them chakras. So why do you need HeartQuest? It shows the patient that your treatment and therapies are effective. Indicates that interconnected systems such as the autonomic nervous system, the neural hormonal, which is your HPA axis we kind of talked about a little bit, meridians from Chinese medicine, all work together in a very specific corridor for optimal health. How does it all work together? Looks at indications of excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitter balance, which is very important for mood, indications of brain toxicity, inflammation, and thyroid function, indications of adrenal balance between what we just talked about, cortisol and DHEA, has all the research scientific parameters found in traditional heart rate variability in the medical and scientific literature. And this is what the doctors out there tell me. We have about 500-600 of these out there, and they say that it's an amazing tool for patient compliance and management. So these folks that are coming in your clinic are juggling a lot of stress, right? They're juggling whether that's the SAD, was that the American sad American diet or whatever that is, eating crummy food and saturated bad fats and refined carbohydrates and all that kind of thing, versus stress from relationships, EMF stress, electromagnetic fields, toxins maybe from heavy metals or glyphosates in our grains, on and on and on, intestinal imbalances, lack of exercise, job stress, food intolerance, hidden infections, insufficient sleep, structural imbalances, even decreased sun exposure, which is really, really important, the vitamin D, information overload, which you're probably getting right now, SNPs. So what are SNPs? Single nucleotide polymorphisms. Those are mutations that we get from our parents, whether it's one mutation in a specific enzyme function or two mutations, because it's homozygous, you're getting it from both parents. So that particular enzyme that gene is supposed to make works 70% less efficient. And I do a lot of genetic testing in my clinic for these cases where people have been everywhere and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And so sometimes we'll see these patterns in their genes that are affecting their ability to heal. And then there's financial stress and on and on, disturbed endocrine function. So these people are coming in your office with all these things, right? And some people have pretty strong internal resistance to be able to adapt to all that, and other people can't. So when those stressors, which I just talked about, all of those things, which represents distress here, putting a downward force on the body's physiology, are greater than that person's ability to resist or adapt, what do they get? These people get signs and symptoms. And if we ignore the causal factors, degeneration ensues. And I kind of show this to my patients. It seems to me that when you do the vital force, when you do the life vessel, it seems to increase the internal resistance and strengthen that from looking at befores and afters on some of your tests, before and after the life vessel. Anyway, HeartQuest is a functional evaluation dealing with the patient's ability to adapt to various stressors within a very specific corridor and have the vitality to self-correct. And I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. And if you see here this little health potential here, and you see recycling down here, our patients are coming in somewhere in dysfunction or disease, and we're able to track them with the HeartQuest to see that they're moving up the ladder to their optimal health potential at the top, hopefully, right? HeartQuest shows us which direction the patient is moving from the optimal health potential to the other end of the equation. So that's what we're looking at. So how much can you juggle in your life before the systems start to break down? Which takes me here to this beautiful statement by Charles Darwin. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It is the one most adaptable to change. Life vessel seems to improve the patient's ability to adapt to stress so the body can self-correct. So when we couple the life vessel with some other tools, I think you even get better results. Okay, for those that can do other things like clinical nutrition and so on. This is a $1 million prize. This is a study called the Palo Alto Longevity Prize, and they ask if the aging code can be cracked. And they have a whole bunch of these teams of really intelligent scientists competing for this prize, $1 million prize. All teams competing are using heart rate variability as the biomarker in this contest. And they say that HRV, heart rate variability, may be the best biomarker to living longer and increasing longevity. And they say down here that homeostatic capacity and adaptability is the key to health and longevity. Physiological mechanisms work optimally within a dynamic range. So what does all this mean? Well, you see the circuit board here. These are all our regulatory systems of our body. Not all of them, a few of them. And this one, I'll just pick this one, aldosterone control and angiotensin control. These are some of your blood pressure control systems. And when we're young, we can go outside the range of this system here, where our blood pressure may go a little high, but then it comes back down. It self-corrects, comes back into normal range when we're young. But as we get older, sometimes it goes out of those ranges and doesn't come back into the normal range. The systems fail to self-correct as we age. And homeostatic capacity starts to erode. Now we have high blood pressure. Or it may be the same thing with our blood sugar regulation. Our blood glucose regulation in the body also gets out of that range and doesn't come back in. And now we have type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, and those kind of things. And the same thing with the immune system. The immune system shifts outside what we call the Th1 to Th2 range, and now we're either stuck in Th1 or Th2. We have either immune dysregulation, autoimmune problems, allergies, and all sorts of things going on. And so we want to be able to improve our body's ability to self-regulate and adapt and correct itself, right? And the HeartQuest, when we look at it, we have ranges too that kind of match this. And you can see in all the screens, you'll see parentheses here, and it tells you what the normal range of most of these different things we're going to be looking at, whether that's the stress index or the autonomic nervous system balance index, or the psycho-emotional state index. Look in the parentheses and then look at the numbers in the circle and see if they're over those ranges or under those ranges. And you can tell what's going on. And if they're able to self-regulate and they're able to adapt to stress. So what is going on when we utilize light, sound, and vibration? Because that's what you're using. Does the life vessel improve the ability to self-correct? Well, we're starting to see that because we're seeing HeartQuest readings before and after. So ultraviolet light is like jump starting a dead battery, since that's what you're using, right? It accelerates the mitochondria, the energy production within the cell, which increases our energy source ATP production. ATP is when we eat our food, it's broken down and we take electrons off of the food that we eat in the mitochondria to produce ATP. That's our energy source to run everything in our body. ATP sends signals to the brain. The brain will then release endorphins, anti-inflammatory molecules, serotonin, and more. That's probably helping. So this light therapy is pretty amazing stuff, right? So if a second identical tuning fork is placed nearby, it will pick up the vibrations and begin to resonate in perfect sync. You're setting up these patterns of resonance in the body using the sound and using the light that you're using. So you're setting up patterns of higher organization and better communication in the body for greater health. So this takes me to Dr. Fritz Alfred Popp, theoretical biophysicist, University Marburg, Germany. And he asked a very important question. Why does a specific chemical known as a carcinogen cause cancer and something biochemically similar not? What was the difference? When shining ultraviolet through the carcinogen, it absorbed the UV light and then re-emitted it completely different at a completely different frequency. This carcinogen was like a light scrambler, basically. It scrambled the light. The other chemical that was non-harmful to humans allowed the UV to pass through it unaltered. From performing this experiment on many different chemicals, he was able to tell which ones were carcinogenic. Later on, he used something called a photon multiplier. And a photon multiplier can detect the glow of a firefly 10 miles away. That's pretty amazing. And he studied living systems. He studied cells. This is what he discovered, that photons provide the vehicle for which information was transmitted. And when we talk about photons, we're talking about photons of light, very coherent light, laser-like light. And it provides the vehicle for which information was transmitted, and that they transmit information within a cell and between cells. He showed that DNA of living cells stores and releases photons. This allows for perfect, this is very important, perfect communication, cell-to-cell communication. Another important characteristic of biophotons is that they follow biological rhythms, daily, weekly, monthly, and annually. In healthy individuals, the photonics are extremely coherent and in rhythm with the world. In seriously ill, like cancer patients, they have lost their natural rhythm and coherence. The lines of communication were scrambled and they lost their connection with the world. In effect, the light was going out. Popp found in people with multiple sclerosis that the opposite was true. They were in a state of too much order, they were taking in too much light, inhibiting the ability of the cells to do their job. Too much cooperative harmony prevented flexibility and individuality. In reality, they were drowning in light. So when we talk about photons of light, we're talking about control of all the cells. Photons of light control everything in the cell. So the reason I'm talking about all this is because we're working with stress. I went through the stress response. We're working with light, and we haven't gotten to the sound yet, which I'll show you in just a minute. So photons switch on the body's processes like an orchestra conductor, bringing in each individual instrument into the collective sound. At different frequencies, they perform different functions. Popp found that molecules in the cell respond to different frequencies, and that a range of vibrations from the photons cause a variety of frequencies in other molecules. So this is pretty amazing stuff. Now, because you're dealing with sound, sound has an effect, which I call subtle organizing of the body, subtle organizing effect on the body. And this is a really good example of how that works. I wanted you to see that because one of the therapies you're using is sound therapy. And again, I said that it has a subtle organizing energy effect on the body. And I thought that was pretty incredible. And so when we look at the HeartQuest, you don't have to know all the screens yet because this is just a brief introduction. But this is somebody who's gone through and has been recorded on the HeartQuest. And what we want to see is as high of numbers up here as possible. So the person's baseline is 43. That's their cardiovascular adaptation, their autonomic nervous system regulation, their neurohormonal, which is the HPA axis regulation, and their psycho-emotional state. But if you look down here from one treatment to the next, look at this. Just look at the numbers. Look at the difference from the first reading to the last reading. 43% to 73%, 58% to 97%. Comprehensive peak performance went from 47 to 76. And you can see on and on and on that the live vessel is pretty powerful for affecting change in the body that we can visually, objectively see. So what are we trying to accomplish with the live vessel? Well, there's a couple things. Either increase the parasympathetic nervous system function, like we showed you, the two branches of the autonomic nervous system, or decrease sympathetic dominance function, where they're in fight or flight all the time. This equates to decreased stress, and that's partially what the life vessel, I believe, is doing. And also, this is really important, high order and less disorder or chaos because of the increased vibrational frequency. This will reflect in the energy plexus, kind of like the chakras, and meridians in the HeartQuest, which we're starting to see change in those areas, which we'll show you in just a moment. Overall decreased inflammation and overall wellness as reflected in the peak performance on the HeartQuest. This is one of the screens. We're not going to go through everything, but this is called the human frequency spectrum diagram, and it's made up of something called low frequency, which is the sympathetic side of the nervous system we talked about. The high frequency, which is the green, which is the parasympathetic nervous system function, which we talked about, the two branches of the autonomic nervous system, and the neurohormonal regulation. And what we have here is first, this number, 113, here's the range. It's a little bit over, but after treatment, it dropped it way down. It took the stress off, the stress index. It says effort required to achieve balance. It's kind of like the thermostat on your car when it starts to heat up, and it brought it back into balance. So there's less stress on the nervous system, right? That was pretty good. And this is yellow, the sympathetic, and this is parasympathetic. So it kind of a little bit better ratio in here between sympathetic and parasympathetic. And one of the numbers here is called the autonomic nervous system balance index. It's way over what it should be. And after treatment, it dropped it into range. See the range here between 35 and 145 at 76. So great, and so that's great. It's making some improvement. And this number here is called vital force. Vital force is unique to our system, and it's imperative to have this in any heart rate variability system because it tells us how fast or how well that nervous system can adapt over time and sustain its ability to adapt. And it brought it from 47 to 132. So it means that that regulation is sustained over time to be able to adapt, which is great, really important. I was pretty impressed. This is the neurohormonal regulation we talked about in that in those slides I went over about the stress and how about the stress response, and the neurohormonal regulation is that HPA axis we talked about, and it's way under what it should be as far as regulating the endocrine system. And red is not so good, orange is okay, but we want to be in the green zone, right? And so it dropped it in over here. You can hardly see that line across here, almost in the green zone. But it went from 39 to 65, so now it's in range. So better neurohormonal endocrine regulation to the thyroid, the adrenals, the negative feedback loop back to the brain is more efficient. Better communication. This is the metabolic rate index. So to get anything done in the body, we have to have energy to do that. This is looking at the metabolic rate, and it's 129 here. And after treatment, it brought it back into range at 245. You can see that this is much more filled in here, increased metabolic energy to do work in the body, much improved. This is looking at the total power of the brain. So that improved. It went from 48 to 69. So now it's at least in range, more brain power. How about brain toxicity? This is really about the liver, the liver's ability to detox. This came out of a paper on brain encephalopathy caused by liver damage, right? And so this is really looking at the liver's ability, again, to detox, and now it's in normal range, decreased brain toxicity. Wow. This is something called intracranial pressure, and it dropped it within normal limits. Okay. Brought up the serotonin a little bit more, gives us an idea. This is not looking at exactly serotonin, gives us an idea about it, but it brought that into range. It was in range. If it's in green, by the way, it's in range, but it brought it into a better range over here. Okay. And it kind of brought the dopamine into the green zone, because you can see here that it was not before. Pushed a little more acetylcholine over to this side, which is the main neurotransmitter for the parasympathetic nervous system and for memory and brain function. And it seems to be cranking. We worry a little bit about it when it gets into the low zone, because when it's in the low zone, you can start to ask your clients about memory issues. Okay. And it cranked up the brain a little bit, but let's go a little further here. This is called level of biorhythm coherence. So we talked about that symphony orchestra functioning in the body and how everything works in sync together, right? And this is low. And after doing the life vessel, it brought it into range. It increased order in the system, went from decreased order to increased order. Now, this is where patients really, really care about things, and that's the age. They'll ask you for this. They want to be younger than their age. So this person was 68 years old, but they kind of are younger than their age at 57. But after the final treatment here, they're more like 43. They're much younger, and they're happier because they want to see that. And that when you do your work using the life vessel, that they've improved and they're younger. They'll tell people about that. Their peak performance went from 47% to 76%. Pretty good. Looking at, this is really the total power that we measure on the frequency spectral domain, and it's 47%. Now it's 76%. When we look at this, we're getting a little bleed through on here, but we're not going to go into this at this point, but we're looking at giving us ratios of minerals, potassium and sodium and magnesium and calcium. And this is a marker for inflammation. We can see that this marker here, inflammation marker, went low, which we want to see. We don't want high inflammation. We want low inflammation. I'm not going to go through all this here for you, but look, we talked a lot about in this episode about cortisol and DHEA. And you can see that it brought the cortisol level from 6.4. It brought it more into the zone. More, we want to be in that green zone, right in the center if possible. And it brought the DHEA closer to the center, to the green zone. So it's improving. That would give us an idea about adrenal function. Okay, there's more. Now, any change you make in the body requires energy. So you're putting energy into the body, right? But you need to have substance in the body for your light vessel to be more effective, to make the changes. You have to have substance, and the body will readjust as best it can to the light vessel information based on the body's resources. Water and minerals, very important. So if you're performing the light vessel on your patients, it would be much better for you and your patient to make sure that they have adequate hydration and minerals. I like to use something called Quinton marine plasma, and we can talk about that in another episode, uh, which is very specific minerals that come from the ocean in very pristine areas where there's these big plankton plumes where you have to have a license to get in. And these little zoe plankton, these little creatures munch on the plankton and produce this plasma. And they take that water, they cold process it, and it has the exact same elements as your blood plasma. You know about the periodic table, right? It has all those elements in the periodic table that a lot of us are missing at this point. And so it supercharges the system, okay? And it does seem to help. And just, getting some regular minerals into the body, very important for creating those electrical charges in the body for the cells to function much better. When we looked at the meridians, the red here is deficiencies in the triple warmer, the pericardium, and the kidney. Okay, that's what these three red ones. That means they're really deficient, weak. The purple are areas where things are stuck. The energy is kind of stuck in the lung and it's stuck in the spleen. Purple is blocked. Total power has to do with how much energy is running through those energy centers of the body. So after doing the life vessel, it took this, see this line here, and it brought it way over into the green zone where we want to be, because the normal range is 1,500 to 3,500. So it took this and brought it into normal range, so there's proper energy supplying these meridians. Green is normal. So look how much more green we have in here after the series of life vessel treatment. It had a tremendous effect on the energetics of the body. And it's making changes, and I think some of these changes will pan out over time. As far as you may make a change, but over time, some of those changes are going to feed forward. And in this case, it says switch from sympathetic yang deficiency to yin deficiency. So if the person was what we call yang deficient, those are dealing with the organs on the outside of these paired meridians in Chinese medicine. And it brought them over more towards yin. It used up a lot of energy, probably brought it over here. The way, and this is a whole other topic which we go into, is balancing these things. And the life vessel is going to do that just in general and balance these paired meridians. But we have some other things to add to that if you want. But what we usually do is we find the numbers here on the outside that are the weakest areas. And so that says 13% fire minister. That's probably thyroid. The other weak area, looking here at the water element, is the lowest number 2, and that's probably the adrenals. And probably by balancing those two things, thyroid, adrenal, probably would be a good idea. If you do Chinese medicine, then you know what to do with that. If you do clinical nutrition, you probably want to build the adrenals and work on the thyroid. If you do Ayurvedic medicine or Chinese medicine or anything, or functional medicine, there's all sorts of ways to utilize this and be able to see the results down the road after treatment. The life vessel itself was pretty amazing because it changed all the energy centers, the nerve plexuses here, and improved them. It brought, look at this, every number, every one of these areas is improved, as you can go down and see. And for explanations of what every one of these things, these centers do, as far as their physical properties and emotional properties, you just click this little info here, and a little window comes down and tells you about those areas. We usually look at the ones that are the weakest or the lowest in reading, and talk to the patient about what that emotional concern is, and give them either essential oils or whatever we want to do. We also have the Ayurvedic medicine here, and we want these numbers. These are what we call doshas. And to explain doshas to you really simply, they're specific constitutions that give you an explanation, whether you're Vata or Pitta or Kapha, for example. If you're got three people, let's just use this, digging a ditch, and the Vata person, let's start with the Pitta. The Pitta person is just going to say, hey, give me the shovel, let's just dig the ditch and get it done. And the Vata person says, no, I need to know how deep we're going. I need to know what tools we're going to use. I need to know what time we're going to get off of work. I need to know, their brain is working constantly. So the Pitta person is more sympathetic dominant. The Vata person is more what we call from the pie that we looked at, more functioning from the neural hormonal regulator, from the brain. And the Kapha person sitting on the couch and says, let me know when you finish. They're really not couch potatoes. They can have a lot of endurance, but they have a tendency to gain weight. And when they're out of balance, they eat a little bit more salt and sugar than they should, end up with fluid retention and diabetes and things like that. The Pitta person ends up a lot of, they can have a lot of acidity and ulcers and esophageal reflux and ulcers and things like that. And the Vata person has a lot of neurological, can have more neurological and their mind, nervous system things. And they're dry inside. Vatas tend to be really dry, and they do better with oils and warm food because they're cold. They're dry and they're cold. Pittas are very hot. And so giving them spicy food is not a good idea. It throws them more out of balance, puts them more in that type A pushy personality, anger, when they're out of balance from eating those kind of diets. So that's just to give you a little bit about that. And we could print out diets and oils for them. So can we use the HeartQuest to improve this HeartQuest reading even more? So we utilized the life vessel, and it's phenomenal, the results we just saw. But we can do some other things as well, like we talked about. And I like to come from this. This is just an incredible statement. We are spiritual beings in a chemical body, electrically stimulated and emotionally controlled. So when I'm thinking about helping somebody heal, I want to hit those particular ideas. The spiritual being, you want to make sure that they're living their life with a purpose, and they're not doing something that's creating tremendous friction against who they really are. You want to make sure that their chemistry is working optimally. And I really feel that the electrical system of the body, very, very important as far as some of the things we talked about, but we want to make sure that they have adequate mineral health to be able to superpower the electrochemical gradients in the body to make the cells work better, along with good essential fatty acids. And we do a lot of work in our clinic on the emotional side as well with different energetic therapies. So just a little thought there. We use a lot of breathing programs to help our patients, and one of them is built into the HeartQuest. And this little circle is going to tell them when to inhale and when to exhale. It's custom for that patient. We send them home with this. They do it for 10 days, and then we reset it again because the body starts to change. This will increase that parasympathetic tone, which is important for regeneration and healing. Within the program, if you want to use this, you can go to the particular meridian that's the weakest. You can go across here and it says, okay, here's a homeopathic remedy for that particular meridian. Here's some cell salts you can order for that particular meridian. For the nerve plexus, we can look at the different nerve plexus or chakras, you could call them that. And this tells you about what's going on with that particular area as far as what organs are involved, what the motion is. This one says this region has been equated with the ability to connect with your higher self. The key is trust and awareness. And these are the essential oils that you can use over that particular area, that energetic center. And those are built into the HeartQuest if you want to use it for those things. Same with the essential with the Ayurvedic medicine that we just talked about. Whether you're Vata, Pitta, or Kapha dosha, And this one is for the Vata, and it tells them ginger, camphor, cinnamon, anise, lemon, rosewood, angelica, and basil, and eucalyptus. Those are going to be some very, very good um, remedies to balance somebody who's Vata dominant, not a balance. It could help them with grounding and warming their system. I want to thank you for listening, and for more information or to purchase a HeartQuest system, you get a call Global Health Solutions at the number here, 415-642-6112, or you can email me, Dr. Kessler, and we have great education for the HeartQuest. You can Skype with me and show me your cases, and we have a whole new education program webinar set up for the new year, going over lots and lots of topics. It's great education. And this, again, is the email that you can get on, or you can go to the website and order or visit. That's the www.hrvhq.com. And so far, what we've seen, the Life Vessel is incredible technology. This gives you an ability to be able to see and show your patients what's going on a visual level, which is really important, especially when you're doing therapies where they can't feel what's going on. I want to thank you, and we'll hopefully be able to do more webinars with you.